Always
guys.
starts with a clap.
We're back.
Hey, we are here at the YCP conference. Really digging it.
Yeah.
Working in Witness for Christ. Yeah.
And check out this fun little app.
So for the longest time, I was like, I remember when I first met Will, we were at the Theology of the Body Institute, and he was like, hey, I got this new app that we're getting ready to launch. It was about a year ago when we first connected. And he's like, it's called Theo. And I was like, Theo? And he goes, Theo. And I was like, Theo. Theo. And I was like, can you spell it phonetically for me?
Like the Cosby Kid, Theo?
Like Theo, of the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
It's like, should I have a nice sweater on? But in Theo, and I was just like, tell me the concept of this, because it's like, I always, when somebody's investing in making an app, I don't know a whole lot about making apps other than it's a lot of work to make an app.
Yeah.
So there's a passion behind it. And when he started to say, hey, you know what, I think of it as like the Catholic Spotify, or just the place where Catholics can go to get a lot of great curated content, podcasts, podcast music, the Catholic Coaching Podcast, the Catholic Coaching Podcast, the Catholic Coaching Podcast on Theo, right? But just an awesome source. So stoked to have just people that are building up great resources in our church.
Yes, thank God. We have some Catholic incubators of creative spaces.
Yeah, like building their genius, which kind of like comes into like what Catholic coaching is all about. So we wanted to share, because we often get this question, like, why Catholic coaching? What's the place? What's it for?
Or people just ask us, what do you do? Like, I have a story. This is actually kind of a funny story. My sister and her husband visited us down in Florida for about a week.
Aaron's one of five. So like they're all in upstate New York.
Yes.
We're down in Florida.
And it was my brother-in-law who, at the very end of it, like it was like day before he was leaving, was just like, I got to ask because everyone's going to like lay into me if I don't. So what is it that you guys actually do? And
How do you support yourselves?
And we were kind of like shocked. I'm like, wait, I feel like we talk about this all the time, but we really don't. So we haven't really clearly articulated what Catholic coaching is and why it's a need in the church.
Yeah.
And I feel like being at YCP, everywhere you go right now, every corner you turn, you run into a coach. So it's not like this is new language here.
But there's also a different definition that you might find depending on the person that you're asking. And so we've got coaching, we've got mentoring, but then we also have these traditional disciplines of spiritual direction and even counseling. And it's just like, okay, you guys look like you're kind of using the same tools as a spiritual director or as a counselor, or are you guys just reinventing the same thing? And so we want to take an opportunity here to just talk about what coaching, what it is.
And what type of coaching we do.
And the type of coaching really that we do. And the journey really that we've discovered is really the journey that we choose to take people on at Metanoia Catholic. One of the things that we like to say that coach always does is they take somebody on a journey. Even the word coach comes from like a coach and buggy that you would actually climb into to get from point A to point B. And so think of all the different destinations that a coach can take you to, a coach and buggy can take you to. In the same respect, a good coach is going to have a specific leg of the journey that they're going to have an expertise in that maybe they've acquired over a couple of years through their own experience. But they know that there's some other people out there, and the reason they exist is because there's people that want to go from point A to point B of the specific journey that they take people on. That's different from what a counselor does. A counselor is predominantly helping people to move from a place of like mental disorder, and to say I'm not painting woundedness to a place of healing, right? So
restoration.
So there's great distinctions that we can make between these different modalities of helps through the primary goal of the practitioner. We like to say. So the primary goal of the practitioner for the counselor is really to bring, like Aaron said, bring somebody to a place of healing. All right. Resting and restoration, we like to say. So that's like we use 3 R's, resting and restoration. A coach is kind of taking that person once they've been restored, almost like, hey, the athletic trainer just got me fixed and everything on the field and I'm back in health. It's like, okay, now pass off to the coach. It's going to help me improve my game. And so a coach is really helping people to rest in a result, okay? So we've moved from rest and restoration with a counselor and resting in a result as a coach.
Can I add to that?
Do it.
So even resting in a result, I think it's just considering there's a lot of Catholics. I'd probably say like the highest percentage of Catholics who are just like, I love my life. I'm not struggling with mental illness. And however, I do want to grow in acquired virtue. I want to grow in virtue in a certain area.
I just want to grow, period.
Yes, right. And I want to live in the abundant life in some way, shape, or form, maybe in this particular area or not. So I think it's like, that's another thing. So if you actually look at well-being of a person as if it's like
On a continuum.
thank
Yes.
you on a continuum. We go from baseline and above. So we take people at baseline and
Baseline mental health, mental
Yeah.
wellness. Yeah. And it's just like, it's more the positive psychology
yes,
part of this.
they're
of
building the
spectrum.
muscles, resilience, all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So even with like how we're going to be approaching the relationship, oftentimes when well, pretty much all the time when we're approaching the relationship, I like to start the conversation with what is working really well, what's working well already that you want to improve upon, rather than what's not working. And how can we just kind of get that back to a place of baseline health, right? Which is typically where those counseling relationships are going to operate a little bit more, right?
Yes, yes.
But rather, it's like, what do you do well that you want to do excellently, right? Because John Henry Newman, St. John Henry Newman, the only evidence of growth of life is growth.
Yes. Yeah. I love that quote.
And it's like I don't know who says if you're not growing, you're dying, but there's something that's like it's not appropriate for
Tony
us
Robbins.
to just be
The prophet of Tony Robbins.
Tony
says
Robbins,
that.
yeah. I'm reading from the book according to Tony Robbins. Like it's not appropriate for us to be standing still and be stagnant. There's
No.
something that's off about that. Even like if we look at even water that is stagnant, it starts to lose the purpose. It's
Yeah.
it's not purifying anymore. It's not bringing life to it. There's really, I mean, God, look at the most stagnant water in the world, the Dead Sea, right? There's no life in that because it just becomes a pool that's
Yeah.
just it's not moving. There's no life in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think another thing too that coaching does. I love the analogy. It's not even an analogy. It's a story about the guy Don Clifton,
Yeah.
who created Gallup Strengths
StrengthsFinder. Yep. Yep.
And just tell that story because I can never.
Oh,
tell
I
it.
love the
You tell
story
that
here. So again, it kind of ties back into identifying what you do well, and then it's like, okay, how do we pour into this and do it excellently? And it's the premise that we even can draw from the scripture of the parable of the talents, right? When this wealthy landowner or this king gives to each one of his stewards these talents, he doesn't give them all the same amount.
All according to their ability.
All according
That's
to their
what it
ability.
says.
Their dunamis is kind of the Greek of that word. So they get this different allocation of talents, right? And each one of us as well, we get these different allocation of talents. And the premise in that story, in that parable, is that when you claim these talents and you engage them in the world, like you bring them forth into the kingdom, they multiply.
And they maximize impact.
They
maximize.
It's like by a rule,
Yeah.
when you take these, you claim them, and then you bring them into the world, they multiply. And it's not bringing them to the world outside of a relationship with God, okay? And that's where I think Catholic coaching, the Catholic part of it, is so important. Because all of this, it's not about these are my gifts and my talents, and I'm so awesome, and I'm the source of these things, which
No.
tends to really lead to more of a scarcity mindset, hoarding of the talents,
Yeah.
a fear-based
Or
approach,
arrogance.
arrogance. Like
Yeah.
it leads to burying them in a lot of ways, or building up storehouses in a very self-serving way. But rather, when you recognize that these are things that have been given to you from this abundant God that has an unlimited supply to continue to pour into again and again and again, and the more you use them, the more He gives them to you as well, as we see later on in the scriptures. Like,
Yes.
take the one from the dude that did nothing with it and give it to the one with the 10. Like, we see there's just God continues to pour
That
into.
sounds like the landowner.
That sounds like what God. That's my God voice.
All right. Anyway, keep going.
Anyways, but the whole premise here, so going back to like this thing with Don Clifton, all right? So what Don Clifton did so well is he started to recognize that there were gifts that people had, and the more we can pour into these gifts, the more we increase their capacity to live into really who God
Meant us to
designed
be.
them to
Yeah.
be, right? Meant them to be. And the beautiful thing is when you start to look at these gifts, you start to not just see gifts that were they just exist from themselves. There's a purpose that's associated with it.
Yeah.
And
but
so-
tell the story about the testing.
Tell the story. Okay, all right. I'm just
Get to
building.
it.
I'm building. Okay, all right. So I love this story. So somewhere in the 1950s,
need
1960s. Okay, I got my master's in history, but I'm terrible with dates. So it's somewhere around this time, and Don Clifton is a consultant that gets brought into this school district in Nebraska to help the reading scores of these low-performing readers. Okay, so they were reading at maybe 90 words per minute, going from their freshman year to their sophomore year, and they want to improve that. Okay, so he had the speed reading program, 6-week speed reading program. He's going to take them all through. He said, you know what? Why don't we give the speed reading program to everybody, not just the weaker readers. Let's give it to the talented ones as well. You know, it's kind of expensive. He's like, trust me. Let's just look at this. And so they did that. And so what they found was at the end of the 6-week program, those weak performing readers went from 90 words per minute to 160 words per minute. So
Okay.
like nearly doubling, which is pretty awesome. Like everybody was really excited about those results.
Almost doubled. Okay.
Almost doubled, okay? But then, the high performing readers that were reading at 300 words per minute with comprehension were now reading at 2,700 words per minute with comprehension. Like
What?
near,
Say that again. Say that again.
It's 2007. It's like 2,700, 2,900. It's kind of like somewhere right in between there, but like they nearly 10x'd
Their strength.
their strength. And he walked away from this saying, why are we spending so much time just trying to get somebody to baseline competency level and improve these areas of weakness when we could be taking that same time and pouring into their areas of strength where they're going to be 10xing. They're going to be making their greatest contribution. And this is also like not just your place of greatest contribution, it's your place of greatest witness, because God has designed each one of us to reveal him in a particular way that nobody else has been designed to reveal God. And when we start to identify that genius that we have, unearth all of those talents and bring them to the fullness of the church, we really start to experience what St. Paul said, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And that's when we start to become a church again, folks, where people are saying, there's something that the person's got that I want. There's something that like we start to be that city upon the hill, the lamp unto a lampstand, the salt upon the earth that really becomes attractive again. And there's a far gone day. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly.
No,
but there's
I
a
don't
days
know.
of past, like we're Catholic. We were just talking to somebody about it. Catholic used to mean the highest form of excellence of something. So Catholic art was the most excellent art. Catholic leadership was the most excellent leadership. Catholic coaching, it's the most excellent form of coaching. It's supposed to bring everything to a fulfillment. Because it's elevating it beyond just a natural, finite human capacity, and grace is building upon that natural good, and it's elevating it to something absolutely excellent. Okay.
Preach, preach, preach.
It's time for your turn. Do you want to talk yet?
No, I am just color commentary
just
right now.
Just dig it right now. Okay, so running with this thing, babe. So that's the piece, and that's why. So when we talk about how we coach. All right, we've got 3 pillars in our approach at Metanoia Catholic, and this is something that's taken us years to really land on these pillars, because we thought that like we could just be like, hey, you want coaching? And people would be like, yeah, I'm always saying that. I wish I had coaching.
Most people don't just want coaching.
Yeah,
they're like, then what? Like what is it? You know.
And they don't talk like Barney Fife, but like it's like, hey, but they are asking these questions, whether they're consciously asking them or subconsciously asking. We're all asking these questions. Who am I? What's my purpose? Who am I and what's my purpose? And then they're starting, and this is what I think coaching helps them, prompts them to ask. It's this question that's a really important question. And it's really the question that coaching helps to uncover, which helps them to answer this question, who am I and what's my purpose? It's this question, what's getting in the way?
Yeah.
What's getting in the way?
Yeah, because sometimes we will know the answer to, or kind of an idea. We kind of have an idea of what the answers are to those first 2. But then when that rubber hits the road, right? Is that how you say it? The rubber hits the road?
Yeah, rubber meets the road.
That's
I like it. It's a tire. It's a tire analogy.
When that rubber meets the road and you're actually starting to pursue your unique mission or what is your purpose, now all the mindset drama, now the actual spiritual warfare happens.
Amen.
In your mind.
Yes.
Actually, I love that quote by St. Joan of Arc. All battles are first won and lost in the mind. And that is true. And this is from a warrior, of somebody who actually fought real wars.
Yeah, and this is why our foundational scripture verse that we fall back on is Romans 12:2. It's
Be transformed by the
renewing of your mind. I got it on the business cards. I always forget it, but I know a little bit of it. But it's do not be conformed by the spirit of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is his good and pleasing, what is good and pleasing and perfect.
Yes.
So the will of God is like his purpose for your life. And the will of God is for you to become fully who you are and take all of the gifts that he has given to you and use them in relationship with him for the betterment of the church.
Yep.
And guess what? That is where you are going to be fully alive, your greatest witness, your greatest evangelist. We just had a conversation in here during the mentorship session. It's all about how do we evangelize in the workplace. And like there's fun things that you can do in terms of like you can hang a rosary up on your wall. You can, pray overtly. You can kind of initiate some of those conversations around the water cooler. But what about just being excellent with your gifts?
Yeah.
What about just becoming fully who you are?
Witnessing in that way.
excellent in if you're high in communication and telling stories, an excellent storyteller, an excellent marketer, an excellent email copywriter, an excellent salesperson. What if it was just being excellent in your gifts and allowing that to be the witness? Because again, it begs the question. When you're excellent at doing these things and other people they want that same excellence, they start to wonder, what is it that you have that I don't have?
Yes.
And where does it come from? And that's where that First Peter I don't know exactly what it is, but always be prepared to give a witness for the hope, the reason for your hope that's in you.
Yeah.
That's where it's because when you're excellent, those opportunities to witness are going to happen. God is going to orchestrate those. You don't have to manipulate those. You don't have to force them, because that's just kind of weird. It doesn't work. It creates more walls. You're clamoring gong at that point.
Yeah.
But when you're just fully alive, fully who you are, in relationship, living your gifts, people don't see you anymore. They see Christ in you.
Can I add to this?
Yes.
Okay, because one of the questions I asked, we were mentors at YCP, and it was the question whatever. We were
how do you
asking
evangelize
questions.
in the workplace? Yeah.
And I asked everybody in my group, I was like, what evangelized you? What did you see in somebody else that actually drew you in? And you're like, I want that, And I do think your temperament, I do think who you uniquely are, your unique design plays into that, because you're saying, I'm drawn to excellence. I'm
Drawn
like,
to excellence,
I'm not.
It's my melancholic.
Well,
side
I
of
think
me.
it's melancholic and you're choleric.
Yeah, I
so
wanna
if we're
win.
looking at it from a point of temperament, I know for me, I'm drawn to joy. So if I see somebody who's living a very full, joyful life, that I know it's not from some material thing, I know it's not from some temporal thing. Spit.
No, you are not spitting. You are just your head's going.
Oh yeah, thanks. But when I know that is happening, when I'm seeing that person, I'm like, I want whatever they have, and I think that's incredible. But okay, so can we go back to who you are, what is your purpose, and then what's in the way?
Yes.
And we have 3 ways of actually tackling each one of those. So it's unique design is who you are. So we start to uncover that. Obviously, we cannot step in the place of you and God and your conversations with God and those very intimate moments with the Lord where He's actually revealing,
Speaking identity over you.
yes, who you are to you. But we can actually on a human level, start to uncover these things by looking at patterns, by looking at areas of strengths and even weakness, limitations, triggers, ideal conditions, your needs and your wants, and what motivates you. And so that's really what we start to uncover for that.
Yes, so unique design pillar, what Aaron is going through, we have these 5 points of awareness that we pick up on each one of these pillars. And the premise of that is each one of these points of awareness are things that we can actually come to see and know just on our human
get
capacity.
closer.
I'm getting in there.
This
Gotta
is what
eat
we
that
do
mic.
on our normal podcast all the time. So.
Talk to the microphone. But these are things that we can actually come to understand on our own with relatively little effort. And we can lean on a lot of the different assessment tools that are out there to draw some of these insights into these points of awareness. And when you start to understand that, say, for example, you start to understand that you have a gift of empathy, right? And you now have
Not a
these
weakness,
assessments start
a gift.
These assessments start to give a language to it, and you start to see these ways that this gift could be lived out in a way of deep contribution and meaning. Then what happens is you start to, maybe there was a gift of this gift of empathy was something that you had a lot of judgments towards prior to that. And so that's even getting into the unique battle. But these different assessments start to give a lot of language around describing the gifts that we have. And when you have language, you can be conscious of them. And when you can be conscious of your gifts, conscious of your weaknesses, conscious of your ideal conditions, conscious of what motivates you and does not motivate you, conscious of what triggers you, then you can start to shape your decisions and your environment consciously with your will, with your God-given free will, to live into your contributions a little bit more, to partner in areas of your weakness where it's just hey, you know what? I'm never gonna 10x this. At best, I'm gonna get back to just below baseline, so I'm going to lean on somebody else. Or partner or avoid areas of your trigger, or at least know that they're there, right? And that's where the Lord is inviting you to grow in more charity.
Well,
through those
I
things.
think the triggers are kind of the beginning point. I think they are gems
Absolutely.
because I think they lean into areas that the Lord wants to heal you in, areas of woundedness. Also just areas of deficit that you have a ton of judgment around. You
Triggers
know?
are trailheads. They
yeah.
are absolute trailheads. And
But let's get into
yeah.
the mission portion.
Let's
And
do
then
it.
I want to talk to our live audience because we never have a live audience on our podcast. So I want to talk to them. But going into the unique mission, for that unique mission is what God has called you to do on
Yeah.
earth, right? But we don't always, we're not saying that we 100%, we don't reveal that to you. But we give you a process of how to start to reveal, how to start to uncover those areas of
Yeah.
your unique mission.
A coach doesn't know that.
No, there's
right?
no way we can.
But
know
we can
that.
tell you it is knowable. These
Yeah.
things are knowable. And I think and the premise that we're operating from is that God, who has fully revealed himself to man, is going to fully reveal each one of us to ourselves. He's in constant dialogue that's there. He's a father that actually has made his home in the human race, and he's not going to communicate with us in ways that are beyond our human capacities to actually take in and receive and understand.
Yeah.
Okay? So we explore those 5 points of awareness for the mission pillar where we're getting into their interests. Guys, what are you passionate about? What actually holds your attention?
So many
captivates you?
people think that's frivolous. They're like, I can't even tell you
Or
how many times
indulgent.
I've coached people and I'm like, what are you interested in? What keeps your focus? What keeps your attention? And every single time people will go at the very beginning, this is so silly, but, and I'm like, okay, well, what if it wasn't? For
like,
a second, you know, what if for 60 seconds we just thought it wasn't silly, and it's actually uncovering it's like those little what's the analogy, the crumbs along the way. You're like you're kind of
Breadcrumbs.
finding these breadcrumbs, and you're like, wait, oh yeah, this has always been an interest my entire life. Actually, this is like an area where I completely forget to eat. Right, like I'm so engrossed in this thing that I'm doing.
Yes.
There is something in that. And I think so often we just toss that out, probably because we have some sinful interests too, just by the way of concupiscence, you know?
Sure,
We
yeah.
have some interests that aren't fully beautiful and fully redeemed, but there are some that are so benign, but we kind of overlook them. So I
Yeah.
think interests are huge.
But the presumption there is that God designed us to actually be engaged in the mission that he has planned for
Yes.
us, right? So what are the things that interest you? What are the gifts that you bring to get table? So we got even some elements of unique design that we're pulling in here, but again, living these things out in a way of contribution. They're no longer just a habit,
Yeah.
but it's a habit that's actually being presented
As a gift.
as a gift to somebody else. What are those problem solution combinations that you just are drawn to?
Yes.
Right?
You'll drop everything to solve this problem. Like somebody will call you up and they'll be like, I need help with this. And you're like, I'll be right there, you know, because you just love it. And you know that you're probably good at solving this problem. Like that's, for me, I feel like that's coaching. Anytime somebody's like, can I get coaching? And I'm like, yeah, like 100%.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
to coach. Yeah.
If you got that problem, I'll solve it.
That's right. I don't know the rest of that, but what's
Check
the
out
next
the movies
thing?
while the DJ revolves it. All right, next one we've got is
Aspirations.
Aspirations. Thank you.
These are like the mission, the dreams that you secretly wish God is calling you on. The calling you to, like those dreams.
Yeah.
That you're like, you don't want to admit it to anyone, but you're like, that would be so cool if that was what the Lord is calling me to.
Yeah, and it's something that's in the future. It's an ideal that you're pursuing, and there's something about this word that God has given to each one of us. I send forth my word, and my word does not return to me until it's accomplished its purpose, as we read in Isaiah. This word wants to actually go into the world and transform it. It wants to create something new.
Yeah.
It's generative, right? God's word is just generative, and God in his generosity has chosen to generate through the generations, through the people, and gosh, what dignity is in that? And so what are those ideals, those things that you and only you have been designed to image God to all the world, like only you in all of human history?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And then finally we got core values.
Core values. Yep.
Really answers that question, how.
What do you find important? Too?
Yeah. How do I do what I do?
And how do you do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, our final pillar. This is my favorite one, and I feel like this is the one that needs the most skill, actually.
Yep.
Because the first two could be really answered by assessments and questions, like perfectly timed or well-timed questions. But the final one is a skill, and it is a coaching skill, and it is the unique battle, and it's really what mindsets get in the way, what emotions get in the way, what unprocessed emotions get in the way, even like wounds and
a lot of about you stuff here. Yeah.
vows that
Wounds,
you've
vows,
held
false
on to.
beliefs.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's really where we go into and we train our coaches how to do that. Because when you know that skill, it kind of doesn't matter the answers to that. You
Yeah.
can like help people out of those places and then give them skills to actually engage the battle.
Yeah. And
But
this-
I do want to. Is there anything else you want to add?
No,
to that?
and I'd say like, and this is where like the program of life or the plan of life that we've been hearing so much about.
Yes.
Oftentimes, like
Thank you.
those are beautiful things, and they're developed from that spiritual modality, which is always that spiritual approach is always trying to draw the person into greater virtue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I also think it's very helpful. While I think it's very helpful to identify your predominant fault and to work on specifically those virtues that counter that predominant
Yes.
fault, I think it's really important to engage in the unique design, the unique mission work.
100%.
There's something that's, because in order to become fully who you are and to claim all of those gifts and use them excellently, you are going to have to grow in virtue.
It's both. It's like 50-50. So like
Yes.
spend it, because so often as Catholics we'll be like, what's my predominant fault? And I zero in on that, and then like the days go on and you're like super depressed because you're like, this is not happening as best as I want it to.
Well, when you're not engaging your unique mission, which is like the greatest fulfillment of your life, it is like your culminating point. Like you achieve your mission and it's just like, it is finished. Like that's what it's like. You're becoming fully who you are at that point. There is something that it's something really compelling. We desire that. There's two emotions that really motivate somebody. It's desire and aversion.
Yeah.
And that desire emotion is something that's very powerful. When we come to identify those points of awareness on our unique mission, and they start to draw us forward, as we pursue the object of our desire, it will demand leaning on God more, entering into a deeper relationship with Him, tempering our vices, and growing in more of the opposite virtues. And it has that similar effect, but I'd say more of a positive focus to it.
Yes.
Because if all we do is say, I just want to eradicate this vice from my life, it's like, okay, for what reason?
Yes.
And it's not just
Right.
it's not just growing in virtue as if virtue is an end in and of itself. Virtue, no, is a means to becoming fully who you are, so you can enter fully into that relationship with the Lord, and you can give Him that 100% yes
Boom.
and be transformed.
The end.
Yes.
Mic drop.
So that's a
We're-
little bit about coaching. But,
Yeah.
like, we got some people over here.
I want to talk to, but I'm wondering if we, I want to talk to some of our live audience.
And I know Monica over here is just ready to go.
Yes.
Like Monica,
Let's do it, girl.
one of your gifts is you just need the microphone and somebody to shut up. So let's do it.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted me to say about?
Well, do you have any comments on
Yeah.
anything? Because I know that you coach. You coach people.
Yeah, you got your own podcast.
Well, I'm just getting started. For me, I had my thing is digital addiction. We spend way too much time on this stupid little box. That's what I call it. I call it the stupid little box. It's a smartphone, but like it dings at us and makes kind of, anyways. But I'm very passionate about the fact that if we don't think too much about this, our habits with this, we very much miss out on God's calling in our life. I really do think that. I don't think that's extreme. Because I'm like, before I got off of social media and got rid of my smartphone, I was spending 4 hours a day on social media, doing pretty much like nothing to better myself, nothing to connect with other people. I mean, yeah, I was connecting, quote unquote. Like I was social snacking, that's what I call it.
Nice.
But I was snacking so much that I had no room for the actual good meal, which is a deep, intimate relationship with God, as well as fulfilling friendships and relationships.
Which is what you truly wanted.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not only, and it's like we need that community, and we need that to have that like light in our lives, because like we're not meant to do this alone. And also, I watched a Chris Stefanik video back in September about smartphones. Actually,
Yeah.
He gave this like really fiery talk at Ave Maria about the phones, and he was like, "You realize like it takes like 20 minutes to get back to that full level of focus.
Yeah.
Every time you're distracted. And how many times a day are you distracted? Hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds. And it's like, what books aren't being written because of this problem? What missions for the world aren't being fulfilled? What
Yeah. What
contributions aren't being happening? And it's like,
what
it's
kids aren't being
tragedy.
seen.
It's such a
Yeah.
tragedy. And I've noticed, like, with the smartphone thing, like, plenty of people are like, I want to spend less time, but I can't. Like, and then, like, in my head, I'm like, that's a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
That's a thought.
try replacing can't with won't.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens where we can, and again, this kind of gets into that unique battle portion of the work, is that the stories that we tell, like, we have been designed by God to make visible what is invisible. John Paul II's Theology of the Body, the central point of it, the central thesis of it is the body and it alone makes visible what is invisible, the spirit and divine. And so the words that we think, these invisible words that we think,
Yeah.
when we think them, when we choose them with our will, they will be made flesh in and through our bodies.
Yes.
And that is there's something that's very good with that. Now, the beautiful thing about that is, like, we can start telling our stories. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you can't, you won't.
Yeah.
what
but,
if you can't?
But it's also not true. Like, we kind of, and
Yes.
the unique
yeah.
battle
I'm glad
work that we do
I'm glad
is
that
we
you're
lean
saying
into
that.
this.
I'm glad that you're saying that too, because
Yeah.
I think something about so often people will say, like, okay, so what are you guys just doing positive thinking? You're just slapping on like a new thought to it. No, we're actually challenging it.
Yeah.
We're looking for the truth. We're holding it up next to truth. We're seeing what the fruits of it. By their
Yeah.
fruits you shall know them. And so if you are just, like spending countless hours doing this thing, you're definitely not living in your unique
No.
mission. It's moving you away from that. And those are not
Yeah.
great fruits.
And, like, anytime I hear someone, like, it's funny, I knew I needed to coach when, I started being coached and it was changing my life, but also, I, like, every time I was at, like, a social event or I was, like, having a conversation with a stranger, like, this topic always just came up somehow. I wonder how. And, I admire that you deleted your social media. I could never. And in my head, I'm like, is that 100% true? Like, I started asking those questions
Yeah.
to myself, like, is that 100% true? What if you could? What if the opposite's true? Kind of thing. Like, I started, kind of thing. And then I caught myself always being like, what are, like, those things that you say you want to do, but you also say you never have time? First of all, I never have time to pray. I never have time to cook that new recipe. I never have time to call that friend. I never have time to, go for those walks. I never have time to work out. I never have time to, go to those functions. I never have time to go to daily mass. I never have time to whatever it is that you're like, I wish I did this more. I don't have time. I'm like, but how much time are you? I'm always thinking, but how much time are you spending on your phone?
Right.
4 hours a day. That's 28 hours a week that you could be doing all those things that you say you don't have time to do.
Yeah. So here's
All these thoughts.
I actually have a question for everybody here, and I want to pass the microphone over to everyone, because Matt was saying, he's like, so often we know what the problem is, right? And we don't have to convince people, like, oh, your problem is that you scroll on Instagram all the time, that most people know that. But it's what you brought up earlier, Matt, where you was like, okay, but why? And it's the same reason why, like, I remember thinking about Jesus in the Gospels, whenever he healed somebody, and some of them asked to stay with him. They were like, can we follow you? He's like, no, you have a mission. Like, go forth on that mission. That is the point of healing, is to go out and do the mission. So I have a question for each one of you, if you guys want to answer it. What's the question? Oh, okay. The question is, I'm like, Matt, read my mind. So
I think I know what it is.
So if you could
Pioneer.
any,
Any mission,
Thank you.
cause.
yes, and you knew it would be 100% successful, what would you do?
What would you do?
This is how we start to uncover what your unique mission is. And
Yeah.
so if you could pioneer any cause and you knew it was going to be 100% successful, what would you do? What cause would you pioneer?
Yeah, and as you guys kind of think about that one,
Yeah.
something I also want to, like, bring up here too is oftentimes we can be like, let's stick with the scrolling example. So
Get closer to that.
I'm good.
I know I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah,
Though.
so like it's the scrolling example. I'll scrub sound like this. People are like, I don't want to scroll as much as I do, but then I keep scrolling, and it's just like, well, then you actually do. Like, just be honest. Let's start with just being honest. I mean, like, I'm scrolling because I want to be scrolling.
Yeah.
And as soon as you can admit that you want to be scrolling, then we can have an honest conversation about why
There's a
you want to
choice.
continue
Yeah.
to be scrolling, and you're choosing it, and it's okay. Like, if you want to break away from, say, the scrolling addiction, It's kind of like with the Alcoholics Anonymous. Like first you got to like admit that you're actually struggling with
Yeah.
this thing. And that it starts with just honesty. Honesty is always the best place. Even if you don't like what you're seeing,
Yeah.
it's okay. And this is where, like, guys, we're not meant to do this in a relationship. And a good coach is going to be somebody that is going to approach everything that you're sharing with compassionate curiosity, not with judgment, just holding the space, suspending judgment,
Yep.
and just allowing you to be exactly where you are, because that's where you are. Why would we lie about that?
Mm-hmm.
And so getting into, like, first admitting that you have, but then it's just like, tell us why you love scrolling endlessly, mindlessly for hours. Tell us everything you like about it.
Yeah.
And I remember Matt.
It's fulfilling something.
There's
it's
something-
fulfilling some need.
Yeah, there's something that's there. And as soon as we can identify, I remember Matt Fradd, like these people were scandalized by it when we were at this one of a talk of his, and they were like, how do we get guys to stop doing, like, looking at pornography? And he was just like, one of the first things I like to ask him is like, what do you like about pornography? Why do you like it?
What is the desire?
What do you
Because-
love about it?
Yeah. And that's
Even.
really understanding desire and like really at the core of it. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what we believe as Catholics. At the core of it, we desire God.
Absolutely.
I mean, that
Yeah.
is at the very core of it. Now, we put layers and layers and layers of other desires on top of it, trying to fix that desire for God, trying to fill it, trying to be God ourselves, right? And like fix this thing, this urge, this yearning for the fulfillment of all desire, who is God.
Yeah.
And so, and even understanding that as desire, then we're a little bit more or less tempted to just toss out all of our desires, right? And maybe a little bit more tempted to just discern the desires. Maybe we bring them to the Lord, and even just like a visual prayer that we recommend people to do who do our journal is just to bring that desire up as an offertory at Mass, like to actually picture bringing that desire and leaving it there and seeing what the Lord will do with it.
Yeah.
Seeing like what transformation will happen, transubstantiation will happen with that desire.
He's got to start. Like, just give him the stuff, right, and allow him to do the work. There may even be some tainted desires, some things that are kind of ugly. There's things that are like a little bit selfish or fearful or whatever.
Yep,
Just
all
bring
of
it to
it.
God. Bring it to God. You can't fix those. He can.
Yes.
But he can't fix it if you don't bring it to him.
Amen.
Cool.
I want to hear
Yeah.
everybody's desires. Do it.
Yeah.
You want
your
me to
secret-
ask the
super
question
secret
again?
cause.
Yeah, can you re-ask the question?
Yes. If you could pioneer any cause that you knew would be 100% successful, what would it be?
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, not to make everything about phones, but I definitely think,
Let's do it.
I like one big thing I'm really passionate about is healthy tech for children.
Okay.
Not just, obviously the habits that we build with tech when we are children and when we are teenagers. If we have really bad habits with tech when we're those ages, we didn't really grow up with a family that was tight knit, all that. Like then it just gets harder to imagine life without them when you're older, But like I use the Wise phone, like I love the Wise phone, and like I would love to, in my coaching business, in just doing really well. Like I would love to be so generous and like buy phones, either like the Wise phone or the Light phone, like for children,
Amazing.
and like that, solve a lot of issues of, in families and different things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I'm like, if I knew I could do it, like with no roadblocks, like
You
I
have
would
like
just
endless resources. Yeah.
endless resources. Like I'm like, I think this goes deeper into even just the family. Like how many families don't even have dinner together anymore because they're all tied to their phones, or they can't, like they actually cannot handle like an hour without their phone.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I imagine it's even on the other end of the spectrum here too, where it's just like there's no boundaries with the tech, but then there's oppressive boundaries with the tech here
Yes.
as well, where as soon as they leave the roost,
Yes.
it's just like free for all. Nobody's really even learned how to temper some of these things.
Yeah.
All right, we're putting everybody on the
Gabrielle.
spot right now. It's just
Okay,
like,
my turn. I have started working on a Catholic-informed health and wellness coaching
Cool.
organization, which is actually why I'm watching this podcast, because I wanted to talk to you guys about it.
All right. Cool.
Let's talk right now about it.
No, we'll talk after.
We'll talk after. I know.
I'm intrigued.
But to answer your question, that's what I envision kind of helping to come about.
A Catholic health and wellness
Yeah. To
Yeah.
what result? Like, like what's the big impact that makes?
Like helping people to see that their health and wellness struggles are part of their quote vocation on this earth.
oh,
Whoa.
love that
And
turnaround.
That's a flip.
Yeah,
Flipping the
and
script.
like by, I don't like the word optimizing in this sense, but by working on the health of your body and the health of your soul, which are intertwined to a certain degree,
Yep.
you can actually more effectively serve others and fulfill your mission, your path.
Amazing.
You know,
Yeah, I imagine
your reason for existence.
I
Yes.
imagine it's even like something that is forming you.
Yeah.
Your struggles form you in a way to actually step into your mission more.
because in a way our circumstances,
Yep.
like we have to choose our circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So, by doing that, we can embrace our cross, which as Catholics we call it our cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And serve others that way. So
Yeah.
that's
Beautiful.
that's the grand plan.
So awesome.
We love embracing the crosses that God gives to you, but not the self-imposed crosses. We're
Yeah.
like, put those down, right?
Yeah.
God didn't give you that, right? That's self-imposed. Awesome.
You're next.
So, well, I've been, as you know, working with singles for the last 19 years and forming them with St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body and his message about the human person. And so I've loved to see how the formation and the community and the fellowship and everything has grown and helped people. And so my heart, I'm passionate about that because I see the difference it makes. I had never thought the whole question of singles would be such a big, question, but there are a lot of people now that are single and didn't expect to be. And so I think the importance of not only the formation for vocation, both if you're going to be religious or married, or if you're going to live a fruitful single life, that's so important, but then also the community aspect and just being able to connect people and have community in a very real and genuine sense, because everybody needs community. And then especially if you're single and you don't have somebody in the house with you that you're in a sense forced into community with, even, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if you're having a rough day in your marriage or whatever, like when you're single, if you're living alone, you don't have that. And so I think somebody one time called the conference, which is, we're about to have the 23rd one, right? But they called it the best kept secret for single Catholics, and obviously you don't want it to be that, right? Like, you don't want it to be a secret, because I just would love to see so many singles' lives transformed, that they know that they're seen, they're heard, their gifts are desired and needed in the church, and that they can live a fruitful single life and a joyful single life now. You don't have to wait till you're married to have the life, live your life, right?
Yes.
And so I think you put all that together, and then if we can get more people married too, that would be fantastic, right? But the kind of marriages that people want to have. And so I think for me, I have felt limited before, just because I'm like, well, it's a one person or a 2-person mission with some volunteers and things like that. But if the sky was the limit, right, I would see this in our Relationship Ready program, like in all the parishes all across the United States and beyond, and people, singles connecting and being part of the church. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Anastasia Northrup, by the way, over here at the National Catholic Singles Conference. Yeah. So if you didn't know, and you guys are going to be in Las Vegas this August,
Yes, in
correct?
August, in just a few months. Pretty excited about that.
So it's not a secret anymore.
Was it a secret?
She said it was the best kept secret.
We've
but-
been hanging out with Anastasia for the last couple of
it's
days
been
here.
great.
And one of the
It's-
beautiful things about you, Anastasia, is that you're living this life and you're very present with the people that you serve, and you know the struggles that they're going through very intimately, very personally. And while that can be painful, I know, entering into the struggles, there's a way that you have done it in a way that's hopeful and it's encouraging, and it's like you're willing to go into that place with them.
It's like gracious.
It's like
there's
just very generous, and it's having an impact.
Amen.
Well, thank you.
Yes. I think it's cool that everybody we've asked, already kind of know. Normally people are when we ask this question, they're like, oh, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me this question before. So
A lot of time people haven't. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's amazing that most people, everybody that we've asked so far are hey, I'm already living in this kind of, and I'm in my, I'm moving towards it. So
But
it's
even
so cool.
even you see Gabriella had like she's kind of like at the beginning of this,
Yep.
and her vision and what the Lord's putting on her heart, and Anastasia's been saying yes to this over and over and over and over again for 23 years.
Yeah.
So like there's this maturation process where I at the beginning here, Anastasia, I imagine that like the image of what it's become, you couldn't even fathom what it was going to be in the beginning.
No.
That's just the beautiful part of it all. And then we have Madigan here also, who is like very.
You guys
We
need
feel
to
very
talk.
we feel very
too, by the way.
underdressed suddenly around Madigan.
Yes.
I'm obviously getting prepared for the gala, but
Yes.
if I could
Look like
do
the Little
anything
Mermaid.
in the world with no regard and it would all be good and work out, I would help 2 million Catholics, 1 million couples by either dating or the process of continuing on in a healthy marriage by 2060. So that's my goal. So I've officially become a Catholic matchmaker, which is crazy
Obviously,
and
you've
exciting.
never thought about this before until this moment.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, anyway, trying to just like take the world by storm and figuring out what it means to be single, like Anastasia said, and then making sure that we like find ways to find outlets and give people hope, because I think that sometimes the dating world has become a very hopeless place. And then I specifically like to focus on making sure that we go back to being human, like
Yes.
what we were talking about earlier with desires and
Amen.
all of those pieces that like need to be necessary and good for those healthy relationships. So like
Yeah.
going back to being our authentic selves.
Even
Yeah.
the way that your program kind of has removed the face,
Yeah.
right? Kind of
Yeah.
because we can get so distracted by the looks
100%.
and like starts. No, let's see the person first.
Connection,
with the
yeah.
blinders on, and then you can reveal the picture later on if you actually want to continue moving forward because you felt some sort of connection with this person.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
Because that's a little bit of like a whoa. It's a
Well,
little scary at first.
the most interesting part is the couples that I did set up. The men were the ones that originally were like, I'm definitely going to want a picture, definitely going to need this.
Yeah.
And then
Very visually
fascinatingly
driven.
enough, afterwards they said, I actually had such a good conversation. I don't need to see a picture. Can you send me one for fun so I know who to make, like who I'm going to meet?
Hear that, ladies?
But there was actually enough of a like understanding of who this person was and like what they were looking for aligned with what they were wanting, that it wasn't actually a requirement for them to say yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were able to kind of bypass some of the distractions, some of the noise, so to speak, and all of a sudden they experienced something that they were really longing for that they didn't really know that they were longing
Wow.
Yeah.
for. Wow.
That is so cool.
And conveniently enough, they thought the girls were cute regardless. So it just happened to be that like it added to that extra layer because we were thinking with a part that had already connected with someone. And that's the part that we forget.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
connecting. Now when they're looking at the picture, they're seeing a person.
yeah.
They're seeing a person, a
Yep.
more complete picture.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so I want everybody who's listening to think about if all four of these women, like their dreams kind of came true, right? And they made this imagine that massive impact
Yes.
on
Yes.
the world, on the Catholic world. And this is just four people. And the Lord placed in each one of their hearts this desire. I think it's very cool to want to be a Catholic matchmaker. I don't want to be one, you know? I don't want to do health and wellness coaching. Like, this is why we train coaches so they can go and help. You know, I don't want to, like, help, this sounds awful, but I'm like, I don't feel called to help singles.
Yeah, exclusively singles. In
So,
a way,
like,
and it's
the Lord knows what he's doing. I'm just
absolutely.
saying.
And Aaron, kind of like even wrap this up because I know we're kind of like getting ready to close out here,
Mm-hmm.
but like, so going back to this amazing question, which is such a good question, like ask your kids this question around the dinner table and
You gotta get closer.
and I'm on it, babe. I can hear myself. ask this question around this is the only way I can get closer. ask the question around the dinner table, like, and really engage on your next date. Like, what is it that if you were to like have unlimited resources
Yes.
and it was gonna be a success, guaranteed to be a success, what would you pioneer? What would be that cost? What would be that impact that you want to make on the world? And just see what happens and give somebody a space to do that. And don't judge
Yeah.
their reason, but just give them the space to do it and just kind of like, just be prepared to be wowed
Yes.
by the way that God His grace is moving in very mysterious ways in each one of us. But here's the other fun part about this, and it goes back to the unlimited resources. All right, when we really do accept God as the source of our mission,
Yeah.
we have unlimited resources. It may not necessarily be the image of success that we have in our minds. The Lord may want to kind of shift that a little bit, but it's unlimited resources. And we may be looking at those 5 loaves and 2 fish and be like, yeah, but I want this image I have in my mind is I want to feed these 5,000 people. All I got is 5 loaves and 2 fish.
Yep.
And the Lord says that's enough.
Well,
It's
yeah,
enough.
and we automatically, like, when you ask people this question, if you had unlimited resources and whatever you wanted to do, and, you know, whatever the question was, I keep forgetting what it is.
Yeah, a pioneer
you.
cause that was guaranteed to succeed. Yeah.
But when you ask people this and they go, this sounds silly, before they answer it, just hold space for them and like, you know what? Let's be silly for the next 60 seconds. You know, just tell me what it is.
Just to be silly.
And the minute you make some space for that, some room for that, then you can have that equal balance of like, we're not just working against our predominant fault, but we're also moving towards something
Moving towards
else.
something,
So
something beautiful. Like this is,
And that's
it's,
it.
and it is a thing that makes His kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, folks. It is a fulfillment of that part of the Lord's prayer, and it's
Amen.
absolutely amazing. And we're stoked to be a part of it. And so, if you want to learn a little bit more about how we can help you to kind of identify that unique mission, that unique design that God has given to you, and even like negotiate that unique battle. That's the stuff that's getting in the way of you becoming more fully who you are and engaging your unique mission. Check us out over
Yeah.
at CatholicCoaching.com.
yes, CatholicCoaching.com. I'm going to say it louder because Matt's far from his microphone.
CatholicCoaching.com.
Okay, guys, thank you so much to our live audience, and thank you guys.
Yeah.
Check us out on FIO, and come to this next year if you are a young Catholic professional. The end.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.